Hello everyone, welcome to the tutorial. Let me start by introducing myself. I am MANASI, a botanical watercolor artist from India. I go by the name Sayonisi on Instagram. I have been using art supplies from Princeton Artist Brush Company for over 3 years and I am one of their global ambassador. And today we are going to learn how to paint a periwinkle flower with watercolors. For this, I shall be using round brushes from Princeton's Heritage series in size 2, 6 and 10, artist grade watercolors from Mimeri Blue, and 300 GSM cold pressed 100% cotton watercolor paper from Arches. All of these are my personal favorites. The other things we require are a clean white palette, a water container, and an old cotton cloth as it is softer from multiple cycles of washing and hence is much gentler on the brush hair. I am using the color Magenta Quinacridone today. The best thing about watercolors is that you require very little pigment to create larger paintings. Picking up size 10 brush. The point where the ferrule and the handle meet is where you hold your brush, and the grip should just be like you hold your pencil while sketching to move it around freely. Swirl it to wash. A round brush should always make a fine tip when wet and wipe it as shown to remove excess water without damaging the hair. So let's begin. We'll first start with understanding a few basics and techniques involved in using watercolors. For this, we'll use a single color and play with different water to pigment ratios. Since watercolors are water-based, we are primarily going to use only water to get the tints and shades of our base color. Color mixing should happen in the palette before it goes onto the paper. And make sure that the brush hair always stay together and are gently pressed on the palette to squeeze out the color. The lightest tint that is obtained by mixing more water and very less color often makes up for the wash layer, which also is the first layer. As you increase the saturation of pigment, the base color starts getting darker. Excess water from the brush is drained by just pressing the brush onto the cloth. The application of paint should be done slowly in a zigzag fashion without leaving any spaces. You can still go lighter by adding more water. The belly of the brush should be fully filled with watery color for the first layer as the paper is dry, and gradually its amount should be reduced for the next layers. This action of applying color on a dry surface is known as wet on dry technique. The paint in your palette should resemble thick creamy consistency. This way you get an even layer of color that does not dry off soon and stays workable for longer. The next comes blending exercise. Now this is one action that is widely used in watercolors. Here we learn how to bring out an even gradation of different tones. Fill the belly with color and apply a few strokes. Now dip the brush in water but don't wash it fully. Tap it on the cloth a bit. This way your brush now has a middle tone. Start from the line where you stopped and drag the color in the other direction. For the last step, wash and dry the brush almost fully to get the lightest tone and end the even gradation with the color of the paper. Repeat this exercise with different saturations of the color. Remember to not go back where the paint is still wet. This will leave patches after drying as the brush tends to lift the existing color in that region. Not removing excess water from the brush can result in blooms. Pressing the brush too hard on the paper can lead in sudden release of paint or water, which again is a reason for blooms. And waiting for too long between blends can leave sharp edges. So adjust the consistency of your paint according to your speed. Mistakes are bound to happen, and in most cases they can be rectified and reworked on only when the previous layer is completely dry. The action of reworking on damp surfaces is known as wet on damp technique. To further understand and get better control over your brush, try drawing a line with varying pressure. Don't overfill your brush here. Twist and press your brush to remove excess paint. Start with a fine tip, gradually press it and release it again. Try this for a long length without lifting the brush. This exercise will give you a fair idea of the different line thicknesses you can achieve with a single brush. With very less paint in the brush, try drawing parallel lines, vertical, angular, and horizontal. Don't forget to clean your brush before you put it down. Repeat all these exercises with other brushes as well. Here I am using a size 6 brush. Once you get a good grasp of your brush, try applying the blending technique inside confined spaces. You can first draw different shapes using a pencil and then fill them with paint. Try to visually divide the shape into 3 equal parts and achieve a gradation of 3 tones. Here, I am lifting a drop of excess water with a fully dry brush which will otherwise leave a blooming patch. If blending seems too difficult at first, try filling the space with one even color. If you observe, I am first drawing an outline with the lightest possible color and then filling the space. This helps in giving finer edges to your paintings. I am trying the blending technique using size 2 brush here. This particular exercise has to bring out a gradation of at least 3 tones. Let's proceed to painting the periwinkle now. It is key to refill your container with fresh water regularly. I have already made a light pencil sketch on my watercolor paper using this parallel photograph of periwinkle as reference image. Place only the necessary supplies on your table such that there is enough space for your hand to move comfortably without the risk of spilling water. We'll start with the wash layer using a size 6 brush. In watercolor, we paint in layers and we go from light to dark. Since the flower is very gentle, we are going to use the transparent character of this medium to maintain its delicacy. Instead of only giving plain washes, we'll go for a gradient using blending technique. As seen in the flower, it is dark near its center and light near the edge. Using that as a reference, we'll drop the colored water at the center and drag it using water towards the edge. In the first layer itself, we'll try to make the edges as fine as possible. The wash layer can also be done with only water. It is mainly done to get the paper ready or seasoned for painting. Now, instead of painting the adjacent petal, we'll go for the alternate one. It is done in order to avoid the paint from flowing into the freshly painted space. Note the series you paint each petal in. Remember that we go a little darker with each layer. But dark in watercolor means more pigment and less water. Also, since this is a transparent medium, each layer adds to one another and hence intensifies the overall outcome. So for layer 2, we are going to repeat what we did in layer 1, but here we'll try to end the blending midway and not take it till the very edge. Periwinkle has very thin and flat petals. After the second layer has dried, using a size 2 brush, we'll try to add simple waves from the edges that are visually converging towards the center. But the trick here is to not draw them fully. Start with small and light paint strokes. We blend everything. To quickly blend these, we'll first run a damp brush along the edges of the waves and then a dry stroke to lift off the excess paint. This way, the waves look soft instead of being sharp. To maintain the roundness of the petals, I am painting curved lines to make the waves look more natural than simply making straight lines. Curved lines also help in defining that slight drop every petal shows near its edges. To add a little more depth, we'll use Prussian blue. Blend it with magenta quinacridone to get a violetish tone. To define the center, we'll start using heavily pigmented magenta quinacridone. Do not overfill your brush here. The petals form a slight pentagonal shape where they meet. Adding a bit of Hooker's green, cadmium yellow medium, Payne's grey and Indian yellow to my palette. The center of the flower looks like a dark hollow spot when seen from top, encircled by a yellowish ring. We'll first paint the ring with light cadmium yellow medium and then add a darker tone to it using Indian yellow. The spot in the center appears so because it is actually a slender tubular structure underneath. It is greenish in color, so we'll use Hooker's green there. We'll mix a little Payne's grey to add depth to it. And finally, to make the petals appear darkest around the yellow ring, we'll use a mix of magenta quinacridone and Prussian blue. Watercolor is a beautiful medium if understood well. It is simply using water to direct your brush and color on the paper. It definitely is meditative and demands your full attention. Practice regularly and witness all your supplies listen to you and help you create gorgeous pieces. A few tips to make your paintings look fresh are to paint under 4 layers, start from lighter colors and gradually proceed to using darker pigments. Change the water regularly, clean your brushes well, and don't leave the palette open when you're not working. Always make a shade card to know which colors were used in making a painting. And just like that, using these 3 brushes and 6 shades, we've learned basic watercolor techniques and painted a simple periwinkle flower.